Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I have one comment this evening for the members of the Board of Supervisors, for our employees, and for those that are watching online this evening. Now, this is I want to begin because this is one of these moments, personally, that I may remember at the end of my career. But I want to begin this moment, a moment of gratitude for our employees, of those that have defined our Henrico way of public service, which is hard to do, because we ask those employees to do more, just not on their daily shifts, but on nights and weekends, as many of you have experienced recently. Our Henrico way is about getting to yes and meeting the needs of our community, no matter the obstacles before us. Our most recent example is what we have done with vaccinations in this region, pulling the state forward. So I want to personally thank each and every employee for their continued efforts to make our county one of the best localities to live, work, and play in the Commonwealth. But I ask members of our community, how do we thank our firefighters for running into nursing homes at the onset of this pandemic, while later over 10% of that workforce was out because of COVID protocols? How do we thank our sheriff's deputies and our sheriff as to how they responded to an early massive COVID outbreak in the jail? They ran in to test inmates and yet had to go home to their families. How do we thank our utility and public works folks who work through the night in storms that we've experienced recently? They work on major infrastructure issues or to just ensure that our roadways are safe. How do we thank our police officers who have faced the brunt of social unrest we have had, yet got up every day to serve our community? How do we thank our librarians and recreation staff for continuing to provide services while maintaining our beautiful community assets for our residents to safely enjoy? How do we thank our teachers and principals who have found a way to teach kids in person and virtually that absolutely takes a toll on the mind and body? How do we thank our custodians and those employees who are the first ones to step foot into a contaminated area and to sanitize and clean every facility we own or operate? How do we thank all of our employees that found a way to serve this county and the Central Virginia region while increasing our efficiency? And I want to underscore this: increasing our efficiency for operating at levels that we have not seen, and you will see this in the budget, since 1982, when your county manager was a sophomore in high school. Well, words only go so far. Part of our Henrico way is doing more than saying. So tonight, we are going to show or demonstrate to the employees what they are worth. So what our Board of Supervisors is going to consider is about you. The consideration could not have been put forward without the hard work and resiliency of our workforce. This county has always had a track record for fiscal stewardship and balancing within tight economic times. Tonight, this proposal, which you will also see in the budget, shows the outcomes of our fiscal approach by rewarding our workforce, all 11,000 of you, without impact to the taxpayer. One thing I have learned throughout my tenure, Ms. O'Bannon, is if the bottom line is right, the rest will come together. So members of the board, members of the audience that are watching I have a presentation that I am going to share with you, and then I'm going to ask Megan Coates to come forward and explain to you how what is in essence the largest compensation plan in my career as a public servant, which goes back to 1997 with this county, what I have seen put forward. So let's get to it. This is a multi-month plan. Let's see. There we go. That begins in April, early April of this year, and traverses through October of this year. So it is, in essence, 5 months. Total cost of just over $54 million. The board will recall they took an aggressive action in December when they allocated $25 million into a pay reserve. This is a plan that within the $54 million, this is within, consider, the lowest tax structure of the largest localities in the Commonwealth. If you look at the far right-hand side of this chart, you'll see that our general government employees per capita, an internal measure that we have, goes back. We are 11, currently carrying 450 vacancies. We have cut the budget. This board took significant action to do so in the current year by more than any locality in the region. And so what you are seeing beginning in April is a 2% across-the-board scale adjustment, and then a series of market adjustments that are being put forward for public safety and education employees. These market adjustments, recall, come from the fact that the board put forward, actually adopted a resolution directing the staff to look at compression every 3 years, and that's what we're doing here. You will also see a merit increase of 2.4% effective the first pay period in July. And then you will see something that you have not seen in this county before, and that is a recognition for service longevity increases that come about in October. So at the very least, the minimum increase that you are going to see in this plan is 4.4%, and you will see this county remain, and in certain cases, vault ahead of other localities within public safety and education positions. You will also see there's a note there for our employees that are watching. They can log into Oracle in the morning on the general government side to see what these specific increases are for you. I think our school system will be ready to provide that information later this week.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a quick question? Mr. Manager, so you saying the minimum increase, I just want to make sure that our employees who are watching are listening, the minimum increase across the board is 4.3%.
4.4%, yes, sir.
4.4%. Okay.
And it then goes
on a regular year. 4.4% is that's a really good increase.
We haven't had a 4.4% increase or 4% increase. I think you have to go back 8, 9, 10 years.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So let's get to some of these comparisons that we have. What I am showing you is that this is our Henrico County Police and Fire agencies. And what you are seeing is that at every range, at every step, this county will lead. You can see the first two columns are current minimum and our new proposed minimum. And you will see for a police officer, starting salary increasing to $51,913. You can see for firefighters the same, and then you will see each of the positions going upward in rank, and you can see that in each and every case, this county will lead the region. So we lead in every position, and I want our employees to understand this, that incumbents will receive adjustments in these cases between 9.5% and 12%. Let's go to our sheriff's office, where I know Sheriff Elise Gregory is in the audience. And so, Sheriff Gregory, your department will also lead, because it is every agency in public safety. That was a goal that we laid out. for every of the agencies to lead, and you can see the same information coming forward with incumbents also getting similar adjustments. Now, let me touch on, before we get to teachers, the longevity component of this, because there is a component for longevity that applies to every position in the county that qualifies. Longevity starts at 10 years with a 2.4% increase, and then 15 will receive 2 steps, which is twice that. 20 will receive 3 times that. 25 will receive 4 times that. Now, our teachers also, this plan will allow our teachers to also lead in the region. And in addition to the longevity increases that I noted, our teachers will receive an increase, if adopted, of 6.9% this year. So that 6.9% is the combination of the market adjustment and the 2% COLA. And we have pulled out of payroll, we have pulled 4 actual teachers, compared them to Metro teachers with the same number of years of service with other localities and where they would be with those localities. And you can see that in each and every case, we have had teacher with 5 years of service, we lead. Teacher with 10 years, we lead. Teacher with 15, we lead. Teacher with 20, we lead. Our starting pay would also lead for those teachers. Now, all of this couldn't happen without the fiscal approach that the Board of Supervisors has demanded on the staff. And so when, in this current year, this county took the approach of reducing the budget by $100 million and then ended up with a revenue surplus in the current year that we anticipate, you find yourself in a position that is different from others. You are going to hear other localities talk about budget deficits and things that we have not anticipated or planned for. But it also takes a lot of really, really hard work to come up with a proposal like this. So it's easy for your county manager to be able to say, I would like to do this. But ultimately, somebody has to be able to do all of that work. And we have an incredible group of employees here who have done just that. And I want to thank personally Yvette George. Yvette, who's our HR director, who, I want to use a visual, okay? If you will allow me. So this is all of the general government. I believe there are 50 or 60 entries per. And this is all of our school system. So 11,000 employees that we have here. Yvette George, Terry Higgins, Tammy Parsley, and these 3 keyed in each and every one of these positions and found a way to be able to, for the county to be able to afford, if you will, a $54 million pay proposal over a 2-year period.
Mr. Manager,
Yes.
didn't Miss George, weren't you in the Navy?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
What did you do in the Navy?
That's
'Cause
classified.
they obviously trained you well.
I started off as a communication specialist.
I asked you that because obviously you've had very good training. That I was just joking in a way, but.
No, ma'am, I did start off as a communication specialist and ended up doing human resources even in the military.
But you know jobs and you know what people pay and
I know what people are worth, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're very
Okay.
welcome.
Just wanted to, thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, without further ado, I'm going to ask Ms. Megan Coates, our finance director, to come forward and explain to you just the underlying financial premises to how we are able to bring this proposal forward. Megan?
Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
So how did we get here? How did we go from the headlines on the top of this slide less than a year ago to this proposal in front of you today? So I have 3 different fiscal years sort of lined up here on a timeline. The blue boxes represent the fiscal year that we're in today. Those are 21. The yellow boxes represent the year we just closed out, fiscal 20. That's where COVID hit us. And the gray box represents where we're going for fiscal 22. So if you start with the yellow boxes, the onset of COVID, March 10th, we thought a worst-case scenario could be a shortfall of in the neighborhood of $60 million. As we worked through last fiscal year between hiring freeze and spending freeze, making some really tough decisions, we ended up trimming that down to just a $7 million shortfall. And honestly, had it not been for some significant one-time investment in schools capital, we would have had a contribution to fund balance. So the timing of COVID and a heavy investment in capital just happened to overlap. We came back from that and said, okay, our initial proposal for fiscal 21, the $1.115 billion on the first blue box, we know we can't do that, but we don't know what COVID's going to mean for us. We've never experienced the financial fallout from a pandemic, and so this board made the choice to find the floor, made the choice to cut as far back as we thought we reasonably could, so that there would not be a situation where this board or our employees were faced with more cuts or harder choices. And that is exactly how this has played out. The last blue box there, you see our worst case scenario is not what happened. Our local economy has been very resilient. Right now, we are anticipating a revenue surplus of about $80 million, and that's without any regard to CARES Act money. So you might see some people floating a budget with stimulus money for the next year or two or even three, and that's not what's happening here. It is not a component of this plan at all. And as we look at fiscal 22, the target revenues for what our departments have seen to date is still 2.5% below where we think we're going to end the current fiscal year. So that's how conservative we're continuing to be. This for me is a little bit easier to see in this format. So here, fiscal 20, you see the blue portion of that block is our adopted budget, adopted revenues, and you see the orange slice at the top, which was our excess revenue. That's our budget outperforming the plan. Then we find the floor, we cut that blue box significantly for 21. And what actually played out was our local economy held steady. Our local businesses did everything they could to stay open and continue contributing. And our yellow box, that excess revenue, is actually larger than what we saw in the prior year because of how far we cut the budget. The fiscal 22 column, the last one, that blue is where we're starting before this pay plan. And the reason you see that go up from 21 is because we fully fund all the positions that we had held vacant for 21. So you're going to see a lot of those 450s start to be refilled as we progress into the next fiscal year. And even so, that top bracket there where it says compensation capacity, we know that likely, safely, our budget could be in those brackets as we adopt it. And that's what we're going to use to implement the pay plan that has been put before you tonight. Lots of questions about, is this sustainable? Can we continue to do this? Will we be able to hold this position in 22, 3, and 4? The answer is yeah, we absolutely can. A couple of things on that front. Our land book, which is our real estate values for calendar 21, is up $1.5 billion over the prior year. $1 billion of that is from revaluation, so that means the real estate that was here today, the development on the real estate here today is worth that much more tomorrow. We had $500 million of new construction contribute to that increase. The value of residential development in Henrico is up 4.7%, so a house is worth approximately, and on average, 4.7% more than it was worth in the prior year. And not to have you believe that everything's coming up roses, because we do have areas where we're continuing to struggle. We saw a 50% decline in our hotel and motel category, almost a 10% decline in some of our retail. But what that tells me is that we've already seen the COVID impact. You know, there may be some lingering effects from COVID in the next 2, 3, 4 years, but what we're seeing with our local economy and what we're seeing with our economic development pipeline ensures me that this is in fact sustainable. And then the final piece of that is just really continuing to defer other new expenses, realizing that we are choosing to prioritize people over other programs for the next year or two. And so we always have that as the relief valve should anything really go awry. And with that, I will turn it back over to the manager, and he or I are happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Coates. Mr. Manager, do you have anything else before we move to questions?
Mr. Chairman, I do not. That is the presentation for one last thing. And there is going to be information that comes to all of our employees in the morning via an email. And you will find a link to Oracle HRMS where you can actually go in and key in your login and see what this plan means for you, for the general government employees. I know our superintendent is going to have that up and running for our school employees by the end of the week.
Mr. Manager, quick question about that particular thing, so that employees on the school side don't have to worry. We're not sending over a pot of money to be distributed as it may. This is specific employee by employee. This Oracle piece lets each individual teacher, school employee know exactly what this will look like for them.
To the employees, sir.
To the employee.
To the
Okay,
employee.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Any questions from my colleagues?
I have one. Is this on?
It's on, Ms. O'Bannon.
It's on now?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. One of the things we've learned from COVID is that some positions and jobs people could be enticed away for more money. And this is where I think Ms. George came in with, explaining when she said we pay people what they're worth. I understand that we've had some employees, for instance, I'll just say IT, and you had indicated even those in the trash collection, the refuse collection, because what do they have? What is it, CDL? Or
CDLs, yes,
special
ma'am.
licenses for driving trucks. And so they were lured away or attempted
By
to be
Amazon.
lured away by Amazon. So at some point, you do have to make adjustments anyway. I'll say that. I mean, I think it is something we've learned in these times. Also, as you said, firefighters and the paramedics, ambulance people had to take risks. So we are learning now, and I also feel, I know when you talk about going forward, being able to maintain this, and I unfortunately fear we're going to have other outbreaks of something. And we have to, this is going to be one of those big adjustments to how you do business totally. So we've learned that from this experience in the past year.
Ms. O'Bannon, so we have hard-to-fill positions, obviously. When you look within public safety, you look at a 911 dispatcher and how hard that job is. You look at a police officer, a firefighter. We have had other localities, I mean, let's be perfectly frank, that have openly recruited our employees.
Oh, yeah.
And the reality is you can stay on the defensive or you can get offensive and say, you know what, we're now recruiting your employees because we're always filling positions. And so this is part of, you've got 4,000 general government employees, and some come in at the bottom, some come in laterally. So there is that opportunity. We have to fill certain positions.
And I know our residents expect our employees to be the best, answer those questions quickly, get that job done, go do that work that they're interested in. So I think it's very important that we maintain that, not just, particularly because they're residents, which you talk about, but I'm thinking in terms of, too, that when these big companies come here and they see how well run the county is, but we are willing to pay people what they are worth. And in doing that, then they look at this in a positive way also. So I really see this as a win all around. Because if we have the best employees and they're the fastest, most efficient, and really know how to do their job well, then it's recognized by businesses who come here and they want to make sure that the fire gets put out very quickly if there is a problem. So I very much appreciate that. in looking at this. I think you mentioned me in your speech, and I'm always looking at the bottom line. I'm being accused of often being cheap, but I really know you got to pay people what they're worth. You must pay them what they're worth. And air employees are so efficient. Another thing that I'd heard is that air departments are what's the word? They're not bare bones or anything, but they're very efficient, so you don't have to hire extra people.
No, you are getting more out of every employee in this county. I know firsthand. I worked in another county.
Yeah.
Before I came here, and I remember when I first came here, just the pace and the expectation is different. And employees that we have hired from other localities have shared with me that same experience.
Hey, you're here. You came from Chesterfield. Oops.
So did our finance director.
So hard work and efficiency should be rewarded also. And I know some people are thinking, well, the teachers weren't in the classroom, but they had to figure out a way to use those computers and do things remotely and pay attention to a screen full of kids and be sure everybody got the work done.
For hours.
Yeah. So I'm just so pleased that we are able to do this for our employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Bannon. Anyone else?
Just a quick question of the manager, if I may. Frank,
Yep.
you first.
Mr. Thornton.
No, sir, you've got seniority. Go.
Go ahead, Mr. Thornton.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to say that, as most of you know, I'm the metaphorical flower man. But I was listening to my colleague, Ms. O'Bannon, as she was extolling some of the virtues of this plan that the county manager has put before us tonight. And I would like to add some additional dimensions to that vision. When you look at a county like Henrico, and you look at a whole lot of other counties, as you heard this evening, there will be some localities that are going to have some pressures on them, some financial pressures. And we are fortunate, but we got to look in to see how come we will be fortunate. Part of that has to do with vision. Part of that also has to do with a term that you hear us use sometimes. It's a locality with a heart. It's a locality with a heart. So I just wanted to ditto what my colleague from Tuckahoe has said, but also give the county manager some credit at the top of the team. And finally, just to take note of, we have one of the finest staffs in the state. I mean, I don't have to prove that. You just look at the end result of that. And we should not take that for granted, which this board does not. But I think one should hear those words of commendation as you would do flowers, while you can smell them. So I just want to say that because that's important. There are some localities tonight who won't be able to, continue with our story because they have their own story. So I'm one of those persons who taught gratitude, and I'm appreciative of the county manager and all the other persons of the staff. And Henrico County is a leader because of things like this, Mr. Chairman. So you and the other board members too have had a lot to do with that. But I could not let it go without casting, and I'll be coming back later on in another month or so talking about metaphorical flowers. This was my prelude.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Thornton. Mr. Brandon?
Mr. Chairman,
Sir.
just one point for Mr. Thornton, and this is a smaller component of the plan as far as cost-wise, but it is very important. I mentioned the staff that we have that run in when we have a contaminated office or space. So this plan also takes that staff, school custodial staff, to a $15 an hour minimum wage over a 2-year period. The state wants to get there in 5. We are trying to do it in 2, so this plan begins that first year.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Mr. Brennan?
Real quick, Mr. Manager, how many employees do we have?
Approximately 11,000, sir.
11,000. Approximately how many unfilled seats do we have?
We have 450 some on the general government side, a smaller number on the school side.
Okay, so let's take the 11,000 and reduce it just to general government. How many in general government?
So 4,000, take 450 off, so you're at what, 3,550?
So, and a lot of those are critical, and they've been empty for over a year, correct?
Yes, sir.
And we've asked that every department, although understaffed, in this time period, work harder, work better, work more efficiently. And I still, personally, in talking to different departments and employees, haven't heard a single complaint.
Joe Emerson's going to come up and present a number of zoning cases here in a bit. That department's never processed applications or taken action quicker. Our IT folks, what they did to stand up a workforce, literally, and allow us to work remotely, we are operating, again, when I show you that 1982 level, that simply doesn't happen in 1 year. It is action after action after action, but what the employees did this year is simply, to your point, Mr. Brandon, Herculean.
So I think your thanks over and over in your presentation really needs to be heard from this board to the employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. Mr. Nelson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm certain that a lot of our employees right now are numb. They really probably don't, probably can't process this right now. It's a lot of numbers, and it won't be until they look at or see specifically how this impacts them, will they be able to understand. After looking at these numbers a couple of times, it even dumbfounds me and shocks me how transformative this moment will be for the employees of Henrico County. That's why I asked you earlier to repeat the minimum increase of 4.4%. You put that in perspective. I'm not sure. I don't remember us ever doing 4%. I mean, 4% since I've been here. I feel like it's been 2 or 3 or whatever be the case. I made a couple comments. I made a couple notes so I could share. I did. 10 years I've been on this board, 9+ years, and we built schools. I love ribbon cuttings. I love them. They're great. We got a couple ribbon cuttings this year. But this is probably the most exciting thing that I've been a part of since I've been on this board. And I'm excited for the employees. All 11,000 of them will be impacted in some way. They are the voices, they are the hands, they are the feet of who we are. You shared, or Megan shared earlier, we cut $100 million out of the budget, and we were able to responsibly handle that, still keep going as an organization, and then still come out in decent shape. And, again, that's because of the teachers and administrators at schools, cafeteria workers who readjusted, janitors who were cleaning buildings all over all of our campuses and schools, IT, public works, public utilities, community revitalization, police, fire, sheriff, and the list continues to keep on going. Groundskeepers, everybody. At one point, when we first started shutting down during COVID, so many people were redirected to new jobs and new assignments, and they just did it. And that's the beauty of who we are. Our employees held it down while we've been doing this COVID piece. They did more with less. They turned negatives into positives. If anybody asks me whether or not we can handle this, yes. I trust our leadership. I told our chairman earlier, our county manager and staff would not have even thought to introduce this without the finance team, the budget team, and everybody flipping these numbers 1,000 times. We are fiscally conservative. That's just who we are. We've been that for decades. Henrico has shown true to just be a fiscally responsible locality. But I think today, what you are introducing to us, what we will be voting on during the budget time, is what Megan said earlier, which is prioritizing people over projects. And I think if that's a saying, I'm going to take that. So thank you, because I think that speaks to this transformative moment right now. We are picking our people. We want our people to be leaders in class as it relates to the local government work and service work, and we want them to retire. If you come to Henrico County, we want you to make this a career, and we want you to retire. Now, I don't know if anybody said this, but this pay increase also impacts VRS too. So that's another conversation, deeper conversation for another day. So for those of you out there, who are part of VRS, this is going to hook up your VRS too. And thank you for the little guy, the men and the women who work the jobs that other people don't value, they don't appreciate, that we are now going to be, again, a leader before our state. $15 an hour in 2 years, I think, is phenomenal. And I just want to say thank you for that. Those veteran teachers that were here 2 weeks ago, or was that last week, 2 weeks ago, who for the past year or two have been coming, saying they want to make sure that we respect them and their longevity. I pray that they are watching tonight. Many of them, because of their years of service, 25 years, 30 years or more, they are going to get astronomical pay increases, transformative, life-changing pay increases. And not just them, but persons who be working for the county 10, 15, 20, 25 years. I'm talking about car note increases, mortgage increases. So we salute you. We love you. You guys make us who we are. So thank you, Mr. Manager, for bringing this, and I can't wait to vote yes.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Now, Mr. Manager, the comments that you obviously just heard, right? This has been a project in the making. So thank you to you and your staff for putting forward such a bold but reasonable and superb plan. I heard three themes in the presentation. The first would be history, a little bit of history. Short history. We're only talking about 10 or 11 months. But I heard a theme of ultra-conservative fiscal planning, a collective commitment to rewrite the script of how our government is going to serve its residents in a time of a health crisis. I know we talked about $100 million cut from budget and pausing pay raises. We were questioned about that, about why so deep? Why are you setting the floor so low? Well, today, here's why, folks. Strength at emergence, right? So strength to reemerge in a time when the economy is ready to go. We will be prepared. This county will be prepared. I heard a lot today from my colleagues, and I heard from our staff here about our asks of our staff. Well, here are some things we asked of them that you heard tonight. We asked librarians to go into call centers. We asked firefighters, sheriffs, and police to rush into COVID environments, as you mentioned. We asked teachers to teach to a screen for 7 hours a day. We asked departments to go short while we battled COVID. We asked departments to spend money on quarterly appropriations because we wanted to be perfect with our allotments. We also asked our employees to go without their annual pay raise that they were expecting. We did all that, and here we are able to come back to them while at the same time meeting the expectations of the people who put us in these seats. The public expectations, the expectations for us to operate a government that is efficient and effective. This plan fits within a balanced budget. Hear this. You heard it a minute ago. I want to make sure you hear it again. Henrico will remain the lowest tax burden per capita of the 13 largest jurisdictions in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Our residents expect us to ensure efficiency and effectiveness of government. Lean that we haven't seen since the 80s. Intentionally vacant positions, still serving our constituents with distinction. Mr. Manager, members of the public, this is not a linear function how Henrico works. It is cyclical. Every piece affects another. It doesn't just move one scale to the next. Quality top-level service for residents comes from top-quality public servants, teachers, librarians, refuse collectors, utility staff, police, fire, sheriffs, 911 dispatchers, permit and planning staff, recreation and park staff. Folks, we demand great service for our residents, and we have to have great public servants to do the work. So, Mr. Manager, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no,
Mr. Chair, you might, for those of us who have cell phones, just check them throughout the night. Even in that few moments, I've gotten a couple thank yous from employees already saying that they're watching and thank you. So I'm looking forward to the rest of our employees hearing about this and knowing that we care.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Manager.